Thank you, Martine, very much, and good morning, everybody. So first of all, let me just say how wonderful it is to attend one of these roundtables and not have to come and leave. It's been really an inspiring morning, and I just wanted to put some perspective, perhaps. Okay. Okay. I wanted to put some perspective, perhaps, ahead of this discussion that we're going to have. And why I'm inspired this morning is because we talk about possibilities. But here in California, and I can just say this because I did suspend my campaign for governor a little over a week ago, and it's been an interesting election cycle here in California. And in so many ways, what we are seeing the electorate really experience is, I think, accumulation of just so much of the stress that many Californians and frankly Americans are feeling right now. And that is, this is a very fraught time for so many people. Our standing in the world as a country, certainly looking at how some of the policies that are coming out of Washington, D.C. are really having impacts with respect to dividing communities rather than bringing us together. And also looking at the fast pace of just what we're all talking about here, and that is the role of technology in almost everything that we do. As a candidate for governor, we had many, many briefings about AI, but I think the one that really struck me the most happened to be about how we use AI to really attain economic equity. And as we think about that, certainly from a global perspective, and I think about it particularly here in California, and I remember starting out my campaign thinking, after we had had our current president in office in his first term, living through the pandemic, and this rush for all of us to get back to a sense of normalcy. We never got there. We never got there. And I think a lot of people are still carrying a lot of that stress and anxiety, but more importantly, carrying a lot of unaddressed trauma. And so as I look at and have heard presentations here today, I hope that some of what we build into what we are developing gets to that point. Because we could have the best solutions for what we want to solve and how we can move our communities globally ahead. But if we can't penetrate kind of what we're all carrying to some degree with respect to that trauma, I'm not so sure how far we are going to get. And I just wanted to name that because this is very, very apparent everywhere that I go. As an example, the creative arts discussion today was phenomenal. I can't even get the Hollywood entertainment industry to think about AI as a collaborator rather than as a competitor. We can't even have that discussion. And because the loss of jobs since the strike and the jobs not coming back since the strike has been devastating. And not to mention all the other things that have been happening in the Los Angeles region, wildfires and just so much displacement. And so I just wanted to maybe open that up. But where I see the through line in all this, though, is that all of us can be in a community about how we build trust. And I think certainly in talking to Laura and to Jarell and thinking about how we can just make this a little bit more attainable for people. I think when people talk about AI, it's about the whole, it's about the big developers, right? The Magnificent Seven, as they're called. But really, there's so much good work that can be done with small and mid-sized developers that I think have every capability of helping to restore trust. And for me, in the public space, it's about trust in terms of government really serving people's needs, real time. Really being able to be in communities and understanding what every community is facing and bringing some relief. And so I'm still optimistic. I think you have to be an optimist to be in politics. But it's also, I'm optimistic because of the work that all of you do and not giving up on the fact that, yes, it's here. We are grasping it for all of what it's going to be able to do to improve our lives. But I think as I travel the state, I wish I could meet all 40 million Californians, but I've met enough of them to know that what they really want, Democrat, Republican, Independent, they want service delivery they can count on. And so we're going to have a lot of challenges that we're going to be facing here in California. It will be an emphasis that I will continue to put a focus on. And I think hopefully this can be a good opening with respect to the discussion we're going to have. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Controller. I also wanted to introduce Jarell, Senior Manager of State and Local Government Affairs at Workday. This is clearly a very sensitive area with workplace policy and how that all intersects. He'll bring a practical, on-the-ground perspective on how AI is actually being deployed within organizations and with the government.
You guys can hear me? Okay. Hi, Jarell. Like I said, Senior Manager at Workday. I can tell you a little bit about Workday while we're here, and then how we are putting responsible AI into practice. And so Workday is a California company. We're based in Pleasanton, but our European headquarters is based in Dublin. And that's where we handle all of our Europe, Middle East, and African affairs. So we are a global company, and our interests are really driven in this space by two different poles, which is our people, or our end users in the private sector, and our public sector customers. And so at Workday, we serve about 11,000 different organizations. We're an enterprise software company, so we're just B2B for mid-sized and large companies. We have about 11,000 organizations that we serve. About 400 of those are public sector entities as well, so state governments, local governments, cities, counties, special districts. That creates two different pressures driving our business and sort of the principles that we use to develop our practices. As I said before, it's people, it's end users, and so at the end of the day, especially for our private sector customers, if there is a question about AI that it makes it so that you don't trust it, you as the end user don't use it, and if you don't use it, your organization doesn't adopt it, or worse, you try to figure out ways to work around it, and that for us would be a failure. Similarly, our public sector customers have those concerns, but then they have a heightened level of concern because they have to operate with high levels of trust. They are stewards of public resources. They have to deliver services, critical services, and if at any point the AI that they're using is untrustworthy and people don't think that they can do what it needs to do, that is a catastrophic failure. Imagine the city of LA or someone or a service detecting wildfires using an AI tool failing. And so having trust that an AI tool can be operated as sort of fit for purposes is key for us. And so that tends to translate to two different pressures for us, which ends up informing how we develop our AI tools and the practices and policies around them. We have, I think, 5 benchmarks, which really are the hallmark of our program, and what we then go out and talk to folks about in developing AI governance practices and policies that put people first. And so we believe in human in the loop. So a human, whenever there's a consequential decision to be made, a human should be in the loop as part of the design process, the evaluation process, and then the execution process. We believe in impact assessments, and so after you've designed this tool and it's on the ground, you should be testing to figure out, both as the developer of this tool, what's happening. But then also, we believe that it's a shared responsibility with the deployers of these tools, because once they leave the lab, just kind of like a car in the shop versus on the road, we need to figure out what's happening when you're actually using this tool. So impact assessments, we believe in a clear division of responsibility and roles between developers and deployers. As I said, developers have certain responsibilities, much like automakers, say, testing their cars to make sure they're fit for purpose. But then once it's out there on the street, you have to have deployers also engaged in the same safety and responsibility conversation. We believe in interoperability of frameworks, so we want AI tools to be able to work as well as they do in California, in Dublin, or in Saudi Arabia, wherever they happen to be launched. We want them all to work. And then transparency. So we believe in transparency and disclosures. And so when we see all of those, we know that is a AI framework that is both putting people first and is the hallmarks of a responsible AI framework.
We are also joined today virtually by Michael McNamara, member of the European Parliament. He's been in critical conversations around AI governance in the EU. I would love to hear your opening remarks.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to join you all here remotely. It's been, God, I feel old suddenly. It's 30 years since I was last in San Francisco, but it's a great pleasure to join you remotely. I guess it seems to me sometimes that the difference in perspectives between the United States and Europe is greatly exaggerated. It's sometimes portrayed that everybody in the United States is completely opposed to any regulation
Yeah, certainly a balancing act in regulating the consumer side of AI. When it comes to AI that the government will kind of acquire and then use, it seems like then there's a much higher level of accountability necessary. But I also wonder, you know, in our public affairs work, procurement process is not known for being very fast. So I wonder, Controller, what you would recommend as governments kind of think through their power of their dollars.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the places to start is the workers themselves. Look, they know the business. They know what the benefits of AI can be. You know, I had a conversation early on in my campaign with the State Workers Public Employees Union. And I think I was pretty surprised at how much they were hungry to actually start embracing AI in their work. So many of them have a very full plate. We're working with very finite fiscal resources, and yet have some very distinct ideas about how AI can be deployed such that for the more routinized work, it can actually free them up to do the more intensive, you know, kind of human interaction work. So this is where I think centering the worker, as Jarell said, is really, really important. And I think we can actually accelerate a lot of how we can get AI deployed if we do that.
Would you like to add anything?
Sure. I will piggyback on that to say that I think that it definitely does start with the workers, the staff at these agencies. One of the things that we're seeing is you call it policy through procurement. And so several organizations, like one that's based here, not here, San Jose here in California, is the Government AI Coalition. And what they've done is they've coordinated, I think it's over 300 different state, local, cities, all of those entities together. And they've gotten them working on model vendor agreements, model fact sheets, model transparency sheets. And so through that work, this sort of work that staff at these agencies needs to sort of move the needle forward by developing models that facilitate those concerns. They're not, they're addressing the concerns that both the constituents and the employees have, but they're also speeding that process up so we're not having the same conversation, answering the same questions every time.
I don't think we should undervalue also the actual constituents who are served. Much of the fear about AI right now with the public is that it's moving too fast, it's going to bypass us, it's going to have, you know, really detrimental impacts. And I think this is one of the things that we don't do well, is just telling the story about how things can be enhanced and improved, and certainly enhanced and improved from the perspective of the constituent being served would be really awesome.
And so I guess, Michael, if you could comment a bit more, is there a false choice between the speed of innovation and the accountability in your view?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is. I mean, I think, you know, innovation doesn't necessarily have to be hemmed in by ground rules. In fact, in many ways could be helped by them. I mean, certainly from an investor perspective, I think people are more willing to invest in something which they know is going to be safe. I mean, there are issues that could potentially hinder the development of AI, or potential liabilities in particular for agentic AI. I mean, ultimately, if it goes, if an AI agent starts making mistakes, etc., who's liable? Is it the person whose agent it is? Is it the developer? I mean, these are things that, until they are resolved, are going to I think, inhibit the development of AI.
Well, shockingly, we only have 5 minutes left, so I wanted to do a quick round of questions. What is one way government could better use its role to shape AI outcomes, in one concrete example?
Well, I always start with education. I would have hoped by now that we could have developed for all Californians essentially a universal foundation of AI literacy. I think where I travel in the state, and there are, you know, remote areas of the state that still are dealing with the last innovation that we've kind of undergone, but you know, it's in our lives, and I don't want people to be afraid of it, and yet we have so many communities in California where they just don't understand it. And so to really uplift our educational institutions, and I think this is the one thing that I really appreciate about this roundtable, is just the role of our universities across the sea, across the ocean, that they are right there every step of the way. And here in California, I think we need to do a better job of that.
I would say impact assessments and fact sheets, either through the power of as a procurement or through policy itself. I think much of the conversations the anxiety that we're having and hearing around AI is just that people don't know what it's doing. And so then you have those questions around liability, who's responsible for what, all get moved, the needle gets moved if we have transparency about like who is doing what and what the impact is.
Michael?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, I think health, I mean, the use of AI in healthcare is certainly, I mean, most European countries have aging populations and of course, longer life expectancies, which is a good thing. But bridging that gap and providing for the healthcare needs of that population is proving increasingly demanding. And I think AI offers a huge scope in that regard. It does many things better than it does many things better than people. It frees up people to work on the front lines. It's not going to be replacing nurses anytime soon, but it is going to mean that it can do a lot of administrative tasks. And I think particularly in the European context where much or a greater proportion of healthcare is state provided, I think AI has huge capacities to transform that particular healthcare in particular. Just going back to the previous question, obviously government procurement is a huge issue here in Europe, and a lot of talk here in Brussels about sovereign AI, and I suppose an increasing awareness that digital sovereignty is important, where companies are located is important, and you know, it is something that can be that can be used against Europeans if they fall behind. I think there's a greater awareness that the targeting or the blocking of the ICC prosecutors' email account was something that did send chills down the spine of many in Europe at the time.
Yeah, moving forward, it does seem like government's role in regulating while also setting some market expectations is going to have to accelerate dramatically.
No, absolutely. I think there's such a chasm between, just what the possibilities are in terms of what we can deliver with AI and just kind of the general public's attitude towards AI right now. It's just a wide chasm, and we've got to figure out how to close that. When I think about still how the general public just feels like this is, it's more of an Armageddon kind of mindset than it is, one of where it can actually bring enhancements in their lives. And so this is, I think, an area that we all have to do better in terms of how we just bridge that.
Yeah, and I would say, going back to a previous comment, we sort of as the developer don't see that conflict between like regulation and innovation. We don't see those things in conflict. We think of it. You might think of it like going to a marketplace and like there's an apple that you want to buy. The marketplace that we're all in as developers, right? We have some of us who are picking apples and putting them in the store, but some of us are taking those apples and transforming them into new products, right? And so knowing that there are guardrails for how that apple is developed and brought to market makes it so that we can continue to innovate even faster. And then that people who want to adopt those tools can adopt them without concerns about liability or other issues.
Yeah, and I guess but I mean, one of the potential conflicts I think at the European level is, particularly as we face an energy crisis, which will be perhaps greater and deeper than in the United States, is where is the energy going to come from to power the development required? And it is going to be difficult, I think, for communities. I mean, already in many European countries, there's a big debate about data centers. Obviously, it's a similar debate in the States that you mentioned, government. I mean, ultimately, the permitting of data centers, the decision of where to scale energy
Absolutely, governments have to balance so many priorities at the same time. Well, thank you so much to our panelists. We really appreciate this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.